Hey everyone, this is Mason Hutchison, and you're listening to Herb Rally, your daily herbal podcast. We come out with new episodes about 5 days a week, so be sure to tune in often. Our goal for the show is to help you along your herbalist journey no matter what stage you're at. We have over 664 episodes, so feel free to peruse those episodes and you're bound to find something of interest. Today's show is yet another edition of the Herbalist Hour, our interview series hosted by me. And today's guest is Patricia Kyritsi Howell. Patricia is the founder of the Botanologos School of Herbal Studies based in Clayton, Georgia. She's also the author of the book Medicinal Plants of the Southern Appalachians. So in this conversation, we talk about the myth of the solitary herbalist, ginseng, elder, St. John's wort, crafting and herbal practice, and a whole lot more. I've been emailing back and forth with Patricia for years on end now, so it was great to sit down with her for about an hour and have a conversation and get to know her a little bit more. So I really hope you're inspired by this interview. If you want to learn more about Patricia and her work, you could go to wildhealingherbs.com. Again, that's wildhealingherbs.com. And of course, links, as always, will be in the show notes. Also, before we get into the show, I want to say a huge thank you and shout out to our Herb Rally Schoolhouse members. We really appreciate your support. If you'd like to learn more about the Herb Rally Schoolhouse, you could go to herbrally.com/schoolhouse, and you could use coupon code PODCAST to get your first 30 days for free. Our members have access to exclusive classes, herbal community discounts, and they also actually have the opportunity to join us on these Herbalist Hour episodes live via Zoom. And we've had a few members show up to some of the interviews now, so it's been a lot of fun to have them in the Zoom room asking questions and whatnot. So again, huge thanks to our Herb Rally Schoolhouse members. Without further ado, here is my interview with Patricia Kyritsi Howell. Enjoy.
Welcome to the Herbalist Hour. This is where community gather, merging the power of people and the flowers, the sweet and the bitter to the salty, the sour. Umami, it's time for the Herbalist Hour.
Welcome back to the Herbalist Hour. Today I'm joined by Patricia Kyritsi Howell. Welcome to the show, Patricia.
Thanks, Mason. Glad to be here.
I'm excited to get to know you a little bit more. So first things first, I usually ask people how they got their herbal origin story, but I'm curious, how was the Florida Herbal Conference this year?
Well, I've never gone before, even though it's just, literally down the road from us here because I live in Georgia. It was, I've organized a lot of conferences and been to a lot. It was the most relaxed, chill, I don't know if it was a Florida thing or what it was, but even Emily Ruff and some of the other organizers, they just seemed to just be kind of strolling around, having a good time. And of course, it's a beautiful setting, with those big live oaks they have in that part of Florida. They're just magnificent. So, yeah, I really had a great time and got to meet a whole other community of herbalists that are down there, and, kind of the people radiating out from the Florida School of Holistic Living. And, they were just the sweetest, I've never felt that welcome at an event before. So
yeah.
I've been treated harshly at other ones, but just the Southern hospitality was 10 plus.
Yeah, I've been to that one a couple times and I absolutely love it. And there is something about being in Florida. You feel like you're on vacation. I mean, herbalism events are like that in general. I will say the last time I went to the Florida Herbal Conference, I was playing soccer on the beach right there. And I went to kick a soccer ball and there was a giant stone underneath it. And then I basically smashed my toe and I was limping around the rest of the time. But other than that, what a wonderful event. And yeah, Emily Ruff is awesome. I'm always just so impressed when she gets up there to do the announcements and whatnot. She's just, she's so good at it. And I'm just always super impressed. But you did the keynote or one of the keynotes this year. And yeah, with Lucretia Van Dyke. Shout out Lucretia. I'm actually about to hang out with her at the Great Lakes Herb Fair. She's doing another keynote there. But one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the show was your keynote. I watched it online, which was super fun. It was called The Myth of the Solitary Herbalist. And I was just wondering if you could give the Herb Rally audience maybe a synopsis of it.
Okay, sure. Well, I'd never done a keynote. Well, wait, I had did one before, but I was very nervous. But it was what really motivated me with that topic, which actually got kind of transformed in the delivery, was the idea that, you can't be an herbalist in isolation, that, there's knowing about plants and there's knowing how to use them in a therapeutic context. But there's also the relationships that you have, like with the plants that grow around you, with the people who maybe grow the plants that you buy to make your medicines with the larger herbal community. In the United States, I think we have a really robust tribe of herbalists. And I wanted to sort of convey to a lot of the student herbalists that were there, because that was a large majority of who was attending, that's as every bit as important as knowing how herbs work and knowing herbal actions are and things like that. Because what I find that my community does in the larger picture of things is that it's inspiring, and it also holds me accountable, because people are constantly introducing me to new ideas, new values in terms of like how to do my work. And especially as I get older and as I've done this work for a number of years, just feeling really inspired by young herbalists who, ask questions and question some of the norms that maybe I have just adopted without really, re-examining from time to time. I also was really trying to just get people to think about herbalism as a serious life career goal, because I think the demand for knowing about herbs and knowing about how to use them and being able to share that information with people there's just greater and greater demand for it all the time. And so actually, that's really kind of I stopped my herbal practice in 2018 because I really wanted to devote myself to mentoring and to developing courses that would help. There's so many, when I first started, and I don't want to sound too geezerish here, but, when I started practicing, it was very different environment. It was the late 80s. And now there's so many excellent training programs and people really getting a really comprehensive training in herbalism, the kind of thing that back then you really had to put together yourself. You had to find somebody who could teach you this and find somebody who could teach you that, because there was no way to get it all in one place. And I see a lot of people devoting a lot of time and energy and money to their herbal studies, and then they really don't know what to do next with it. And so that's really my passion right now in my life, is to kind of make that bridge, help student practitioners get the tools they need to take themselves seriously. So that really motivated my talk at the Florida School.
Well, I think you did a wonderful job. I couldn't tell you were nervous. I'm curious, how did you prepare to do that? Did you get some sort of like speaking lessons or anything like that? Because everything was constructed so well. You had lots of great stories intertwined and everything.
I didn't really know what I was going to say. To be
just winged it.
I had a little note, a little scrap of paper that I just wrote some ideas on. It was kind of a channel talk. One of the things that I really felt that in giving that talk was, so my grandfather, I grew up in Northern Illinois, in Waukegan, Illinois, and my grandfather emigrated from Greece, and my grandparents, and he was very funny. He had an amazing sense of dry humor. And at one point, he was in a talent show contest in Waukegan, and the other doing comedy, and the other person was Jack Benny. And this was before Jack Benny was Jack Benny. He was just getting started. And in that talent show, my grandfather won the best comedian.
Wow.
So in our family, that's kind of like this legacy of like, my grandfather was funnier than Jack Benny. And I really felt him when I was talking at the Florida conference, because I didn't really intend to be funny. But it did turn out that people complained that they were laughing so hard their face. So I took that as a compliment, and I thanked my grandfather, for, bringing that in for me.
Yeah. I couldn't hear the audience laughter through the Zoom, but I was laughing by myself while I was walking around town. But I remember. So speaking kind of to the subject matter of your keynote, I was reading on your Instagram, and I don't know if you're trying to be funny here or not, but you said something like, you should just quit your day job and go become an herbalist. Is that kind of what you're talking about right there?
Yeah,
Like,
that's my goal. That's my goal. Yeah.
Sweet. Okay.
Actually.
Well, yeah, I mean, I know during the keynote you were chatting about kind of your upbringing and how you ended up getting into your herbal journey. I'm just kind of curious if you could share with the audience, like, what's your herbal origin story? How did you get into herbalism?
Well, two things, I had gotten I just thought wildflowers were amazing. And when I grew up, I lived kind of near a savanna, a prairie, that had a lot of wildflowers. So, I just was intrigued by them and tried to teach myself about them. I think I got a copy of Jethro Kloss's Back to Eden, in the late 60s. And, just the whole idea that a flower could be a medicine just kind of blew my mind. And then I just, it was always like kind of a hobby, like making things out of plants, all of that. And, some pretty horrible experiments, actually, that, that I tried on different people. But, it was just, I came from a very, a family where you got a job, you went and you got a job. And I was a first generation in my family to go to college, after people emigrated here. And so it never occurred to me that it would be something you could do for work. It was just a hobby. I went to college to study film and television, worked in the music business in San Francisco for about 7 or 8 years. But then I went to a workshop in San Francisco that David Hoffman did. I had bought his book, The Holistic Herbal, and kind of worn it out, just like notes and spilled things on it. And then when I heard that he was going to be speaking in San Francisco, I was kind of giddy. In fact, I actually called he was teaching at the California School of Herbal Studies at that point, and I called there to ask a question about like what time it started or something. And the person who answered the phone was like, "Oh, just a minute, David, a question." And I was like, "Oh my God, you get on the phone and talk to me?" My mouth went dry. But anyway, I went to that weekend with him in San Francisco. And, I think a lot of us have had that experience where you meet a teacher who, the way they talk about things, their understanding, their context that they teach things in, resonates with how your brain works.
Totally.
And when I met David, it was like everything he said just clicked into place for me. And at the end of the class, he said that he was just about to begin a year-long training program at the California School of Herbal Studies, and that there were just a few openings left. And I just literally went home. I was living in Oakland at the time, and quit my job and sublet my apartment and took my life savings and moved up to Forestville, California, and enrolled in the program. And that was kind of, that was it. I just held my nose and jumped in.
Yeah, beautiful campus. We just visited there, I want to say last April. I'd never been there before, but I've always heard about it, of course. And and we got to hang out with David Hoffman there, and it was an awesome experience. So then you ended up studying with David then. He was your original herbal mentor?
Yeah, David and Amanda McQuaid Crawford was teaching there. This was the first year after Rosemary Gladstar left the school. Was there. And Tim Blakely, who I don't know if you know him.
Yep, I do.
Where he's in Hawaii. I actually just saw him a few years ago when I was over there. He really taught, he taught field botany and all of that, which, I loved learning actually the botany aspect, the sort of terms and how to use a botanical key and all of that. So they were, and Mindy Green and James Green were both teachers there too at that time. And then I moved back to Illinois and I met Althea Northridge Orr, who's a acupuncturist herbalist in Chicago. She'd been practicing for quite a while at that time even. But my cousin came over to my house one day and he goes, you know what, your house smells like my acupuncturist office. And I was like, I need to meet your acupuncturist. So I made an appointment. I went to Chicago because my hometown is about 70 miles away. And, she came in the treatment room. What can I do to help you? And I told her I was an herbalist and I never did get acupuncture from her. We just started talking about herbs. And what we realized is that she knew the clinical aspect of herbalism, like how to assess somebody, do a differential diagnosis, how to, create a formula that was customized for them. But if she saw a plant growing and it wasn't in a jar with a label, she didn't know it. And I had the opposite. I was like, I could recognize plants. I knew plant families. I knew harvesting methods, medicine making. But when a person sat down in front of me, I just kind of was a deer in the headlights, like, how do I put these two pieces together? Yeah. And so being entrepreneurial types, as we both are, we were like, wow, I wish I knew what you knew. And she said, I wish I knew what. So we decided to do a 6-weekend herb program in Chicago. And she would teach 5-element theory therapeutics, and I would teach field botany and medicine making. And basically what was happening is while she was talking, I was writing everything down. And while I was talking, she was writing everything down. And then we realized 6 weekends wasn't enough. And we ended up with a 10-month program in the early 90s that we started. And Althea has a plant sanctuary in northern Indiana. So we would take the students down there to do field botany and medicine making. And through her, I learned the energetic aspect of herbs, which, I have nothing but gratitude to my California school teachers. But it was a much more Western European herbal approach, a body systems approach. And even in the short time that I had practiced after getting out of herb school, I felt kind of frustrated because there was no sort of like psycho-spiritual dimension to choosing herbs or assessing somebody, and I could see that was a big part of what was going on with the people I was working with. So through Althea, I really learned how to use 5-phase theory to recognize patterns and to, go beyond just symptom-oriented treatments. So it blew my mind, to be honest.
Yeah, and I've heard similar sentiments. I interviewed Missy Rose a couple months back, and she started a school with a friend of hers named Grady Proctor, and they were kind of similar situation where they kind of fed off of each other because one had expertise in one area and vice versa. And actually, that seems like a good idea if you're going to start an herb school, if you're kind of just getting going, maybe team up with someone who is an expert in something that you're not. Althea Northridge Orr is just down the road for me. I mean, about 3 hours. If she's still in Chicago, I'm not 100% certain, but she's one of
my best friends. She's still there, definitely. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I gotta link up with her and do an interview or something. That would be awesome. I've never actually met her, I don't believe. But so you were doing these classes with Althea. And then you later on, I know you started living in Georgia and with your Botanologos school. And I'm just kind of curious, how did that transition happen? And also, can you tell us more about the Botanologos school in general?
Well, even though I have told you in our email correspondences that starting later this year, I'm going to be living part-time in Madison, Wisconsin. Yeah. But I just couldn't deal with the cold.
Yeah.
I had lived in the West Coast for a long time, and I had a lot of friends in Atlanta because of work I used to do here in the music business. And I also was aware, as I think most of us are, of the incredible botanical diversity of the Southern Appalachians. And so we decided to see if we could get the school to do the same program in Atlanta. So for I think 2 years, we did one weekend a month I would go to Chicago, and one weekend a month Althea would come here, and we taught the classes in Atlanta. But after a few years, I moved the school up into the mountains. I kind of felt like the Pied Piper. I needed to be in a big cosmopolitan place where I could meet a lot of people and then kind of trick them into following me into the mountains. And that's pretty much what happened. I moved there in 94 and in 99 to Atlanta. And in 99, I moved up here to where I live now, which is, I'm in the corner of Georgia where South Carolina, Georgia, and North Carolina come together. So not far from Asheville, actually closer to Asheville than to Atlanta.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that, I really wanted to be kind of in the, we call this the apothecary of North America. I mean, the amount of medicinal plants that grow in the wild here is pretty remarkable. So that's what, Althea and I did that school together. We called it the Living with Herbs Institute for about 7 years. And then I changed the name to Botanologos. We both burned out, really, going back and forth for years. So she took the school, she took Chicago and I took Georgia, and changed the name. That's kind of how I got up here where I am now.
So I presume you'll be spending the summers in Wisconsin and the winters in Atlanta. Is that kind of how you're going to do it, or Georgia?
Not Atlanta, but here. I mean, I will probably actually spend most of the winters in Madison, and then come here in the summers to teach.
Awesome.
The field studies and the kind of on the ground stuff that I do now, plant walks and things.
Well, you wrote a book about your area. Do you want to tell a little bit about that? And I don't suppose you have any plans of writing a medicinal herb book about Wisconsin plants.
Who knows?
Okay. Who knows? I'm requesting it.
Okay. I mean, I have thought for years about, just sort of like the Great Lakes region,
totally.
But, the Michigan, Wisconsin, UP kind of range of plants there, because there's a lot there too,
Yeah.
Well, I wrote a book called Medicinal Plants of the Southern Appalachians that was kind of inspired by the many books that Michael Moore wrote, so he had Medicinal Plants of the Rocky Mountains and, all of that. And I really loved his books. And so I thought, there needed to be something that was focused on medicinal plants of this region. So what I did is, looked at what are the plants that would have been here 150 years ago. I didn't include anything that was naturalized or introduced at all. I just focused on plants that were native to the area. So there's 45 plants. And I had a friend here who, she grew up here. Her family had been here for generations. She's a few years older than me. She grew all her own food. But one time we were talking and she said one of her life regrets was that nobody in her family ever taught her anything about herbs. And that she knew that they knew how to use them and that they used them, and she drank teas and things, but nobody sat her down and taught her that. So I kind of wrote the book for her. I wrote it for Linda. I was like, this is your heritage. I'm a Yankee. I'm a Midwesterner. But let me break it down for you so that this information makes sense to you. And, pretty much anyone, I hope, can pick up my book and feel, confident that they can use some of those plants, how to harvest them and what to do with them. So that was really the inspiration for writing it. And when I was writing it, I was doing some teaching at the University of Georgia in Athens, Georgia, and they were really interested in the book, the press there, and they asked if they could have first look at it. So when I finished it, I sent it to them, and it was a bad experience because they basically said that the only way they could publish it is if I had research documentation for all the information about the herbs in the book. So, we're talking jewelweed, it doesn't exist, that has never been studied in depth. And so I said that wasn't possible. And they said, well, then could you get a PhD, someone with a PhD to sign on as your co-author? Because we're an academic press, and then we could do it. And I took the book back from them. I pouted for about 6 months. And then I went to a workshop on self-publishing at Emory University in Atlanta. And the guy there who taught it, I showed him the manuscript, and he was like, don't give this to a publisher. This is a reference book. Here's how to do it. And so I self-published it in 2006. And it still sells really, really well. And I'm actually getting ready to do a version with photographs now. That's the next project for the winter. But anyway, that's how the book came into being. Long story, but.
Yeah. So you're going to republish it with new photos and updated and stuff.
Yeah. And as an ebook, and then also develop it into an app so that people could, because now there's all those ways you can just take a picture and identify it, and then someone could go to the app and look it up and see what to do with it.
Right. Right on. Well, thanks for sharing. I want to shout out Lydia for she's an Herb Rally Schoolhouse member. She's here watching the interview. So Lydia, if you have any questions for Patricia, feel free to leave that in the Q&A section or the chat. But I did get a member question from Diana. She's another member as well. And this is particularly pertaining to plants of the Appalachians. So 2 questions. She says, I've found a ginseng patch on my land in the woods that looks to be maybe 2 or 3 years old, not seen the berries yet. How many years should I wait before harvesting some root for some tincture? You got any thoughts on that?
Well, I think traditionally 6 or 7 years is prime for wild ginseng. I will just sort of share something with her, though, if she does have it on her property, that I learned from Doug Elliott, who lives up in North Carolina, a storyteller and herbalist, and I do this myself, is whenever I come across wild ginseng, is to, it has 5 leaves, to pinch off the 2 small leaves on every plant, so that if poachers come through, they get confused. They're like, this is not what I thought, this doesn't look like ginseng. But it's a way of protecting your plant. And I don't know where she is, but I know around here, poaching of ginseng plants on private land is a big issue. Because it's a valuable plant. Brokers will pay quite a bit for it.
Yeah, I don't think they mentioned where they're at, but and then kind of a follow-up question, Diana said, and can I replant the berries as soon as they come on in the fall, or do something different?
I mean, I think that's traditionally what has been done, is that, when they're bright red, people, dig the root and then put those seeds in the plant in there. I think there may be more to it than that, because ginseng is notoriously hard to germinate in my experience. So I would recommend, there's a book by Janine Davis and Scott Persons on ginseng, golden seal, and other woodland botanicals, and they give some pretty detailed information in there about propagating it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All righty. So shifting gears a little bit, I know you're particularly passionate about this topic. If I were to say, how do you make a living as an herbalist? What would you say?
How to make a living as an herbalist? It is a question I've answered many times. I mean, I think, there's no place, very few, maybe minimal options for going and getting a job as an herbalist, unless you're working in sort of a retail setting. So I think you have to be an entrepreneur and a really self-motivated, and you know this yourself, right?
Sure, yeah.
Amanda had just launched this really successful, but very demanding, I would imagine, project with Herb Rally. So I think that if you're not somebody who doesn't want to pay attention to business and all the things like now with social media and keeping a website going, it's really hard to have it be a significant amount of your income. I also don't know many herbalists who have only one revenue stream. Most have they do some teaching, they do some practicing, maybe they do some growing, maybe they have a product they sell, they publish something. So it's a very holistic practice if you're going to do it. Would you agree?
Absolutely. And it's interesting, I've struggled with calling myself an herbalist because I'm not seeing clients and whatnot, but I'm definitely been involved in the herbal community for over a decade now. And, since I was early 20s and whatnot. And, and then I found out, quasi having some sort of passion for wanting to pursue, an entrepreneurial career outside of, working for somebody. So that's been a huge learning curve. And there's constantly new things to learn, and it's never boring, I'll say that much. But you really have to just you have to like read business books and stuff like that. It feels I've said stuff like that publicly before, and I get kind of pushback, like, fuck capitalism and stuff like that. But I don't know what else to say other than continuously trying to live in the world that we are, and just keep learning how to do this. And we have so kind of going back to David Hoffman, I have 2 videos on the Herb Rally YouTube channel, and one is David Hoffman talking about, he's giving herbal business advice, and he's basically saying, don't do it, just help people. And it's very polarizing. Reading the comments is pretty funny. And people bring up great points. I think that there's a lot of great, what am I trying to say? There's a lot of nuance to it. And, but then we have another video with Christina Dinas, and she's essentially saying, know your worth. You need to know what to charge folks. And she's essentially saying you have to be an herbal entrepreneur. It's very bizarre trying to be an herbal entrepreneur because it feels contradictory in some ways. But if you want to make a living at it, I personally think you have to kind of learn the ropes and just kind of face it.
Yeah. The other thing too and I see this a lot, because I do a lot of mentoring and teaching, is there's this sort of, like you said, the anti-capitalism model, which, that's the system we live in right now. You can hate it, or you can try to work it for your own ends, is how I look at it, and so I see a lot of, especially student herbalists, who are really uncomfortable being paid for their work or charging for their herbs. And I always say to them, I use this sort of like this metaphor. It's like if I had 2 lawn chairs sitting next to each other, and I had a board between them, and I'm standing on them, and I'm trying to help you because you're sick. I'm on a wobbly platform, and there's a really good chance that I'm going to burn out. I'm going to get in a situation where I can't afford to live where I live because I'm not making enough money, or, whatever. And so I'm not going to be able to help anybody because I don't have a firm foundation. So I encourage my mentees to charge money for what they do, and then take if they don't feel comfortable keeping that money, use it for something for the good. Yep. Right. But make sure that you have what you need to have a place to live, to have a car that drives, to, take more education, and you can do more good in the world than being kind of self-sacrificing and not taking payment for what you do. I also think people don't appreciate what they don't pay for.
That's a great point. I just interviewed Thomas Easley, and he was saying essentially his tincture company is to help subsidize his free clinic. And I thought that was a really cool point. He's doing great work in his community, and, that's essentially helping him fund it. I'll also say this is my journey. Like what I just shared there is my journey, and, people could be critical of all they want, but I remember when I was in my late teens, early 20s, I was super hippied out. I was trying to be as minimal as possible. And I was very, I don't know. I thought I wanted to go live in the woods and just, be a hermit. But then for whatever reason, my spirit was telling me to, do some sort of work that was going to help the world in some way. And I'll tell you this much, my mental health has been a lot greater now that I'm actually feel like I'm doing something, helping participate and like provide value to the world, as opposed to just, being a, I guess a hermit, if you will. Does that make sense, what I'm trying to say here?
Yeah, it totally does. I have a funny story that I'll share with you.
Please.
So this was I don't know, maybe sometime in the early 2000s, we did an event at the Atlanta Botanical Garden, and Michael Tierra was there, and I think David Winston might have been there. So I don't remember, some of the herbalists. I was organizing some training, some programming for them. And the director of programming took us out to dinner, and really lovely woman, but didn't know a thing about what we were talking about, and definitely wasn't, like many of us, a hippie who, came into this world because it conformed with a lot of our values. So that was during the Clinton administration, where he had just said that they had asked him if he'd ever smoked pot, and he said, yes, but I didn't inhale.
I remember that.
Yeah. And so we're all having dinner, and the program director said, so what would you attribute to the fact that you all chose this kind of unusual career path? And everyone was kind of quiet for a while. And then Michael Tierra said, we never exhaled.
That's so good.
And she was like, what are you talking about? I'll just like rolled on the floor laughing. You're like, there you have it. There you have it, So
I love that.
I do think you have to have one foot in the world of financial reality in order to do this work, and I don't want people to burn out. I want them to take that passion and inspiration and parlay it into something that supports them and makes a difference in the world, like you said.
Yeah.
So, I mean, when I hear from people that I worked with in my practice years ago, and they are complimentary or, express gratitude for the things that I was able to help them change in their health picture, quality of life, I just feel like, what more could I ask for? That I had that effect. As not as me, I didn't cure anything, but I see my role as being kind of like the person who makes the introductions. Yeah. So you have this person who feels hopeless. They don't really know what to do. They're suffering in some way. And then you have these amazing plants who have all of these qualities. And so I'd like you to meet this herb, yeah. And then to see people take that and run with it, I think when people have the realization that a plant can heal them, and they have the visceral experience of that happening, it changes everything about how they look at the world, nature, yeah. Their place in the world, their relationship with the earth's resources. So, that's really where I'm headed when I work with people, is like, I want them to feel more at home on the earth.
That sounds like a great purpose, and yeah, I highly encourage the listener to check out the video with Christina Dinas too, because I feel like it encapsulates a lot of what we were kind of discussing there. And certainly she was more well put than what I was trying to get across there. But I'm still getting used to, like, being a host and like putting myself out there in this way. But it is, yeah, it's interesting to kind of combine the whole entrepreneurial journey with what we're trying to do here at Herb Rally. So thank you for sharing your thoughts on the whole matter. Maybe now's a good time to talk about some plants, just to kind of go back to talking about the plants. But I will say, Lydia, in the Herb Rally Schoolhouse member, she asked if she could please see a copy of the book. Do you have a copy next to you, perchance?
I have one right here. Let me just grab it.
Sure, totally.
Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
So, this is it.
Yeah. And I'll definitely leave a link to the book in the show notes. Is there a particular link you want me to use, or shall we link to Amazon?
Yeah, I mean, it's on Amazon. Cool. You can also buy it for less off of my website.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, the wildhealingherbs.com website. Yeah.
Awesome. We will link to the book. Sweet. Well, I was asking if you wanted to talk about any particular plant pre-call. And you said you have a good story about Elder and St. John's and Solstice. So would you mind sharing that story?
Yeah, because when you sent me that question, I was thinking about, people say, what's your favorite herb? Which is like the most annoying question in the world.
Yeah.
Because I my love affair with herbs changes with the seasons,
Always.
so whatever herb is around, I'm like, oh my God, I love you so much. I can't have enough. So it's been about elder flowers here. All the elder flowers are in bloom right now. And I just made about a gallon of elderflower cordial, which, I love later, to be able to add that to drinks and things. But when I was in herb school, I went up to Oregon. I drove up to Oregon one time, and being a poor, starving herb student, I just would find a place on a back road that I could pull over and sometimes set up a tent, sometimes just throw my sleeping bag down on the ground. And it was right around summer solstice, and I found this little field, and I was like kind of exploring it. And I had just learned I think it was from Maud Grieve, actually, because that was, such a mind-blowing book for me. I've read it cover to cover several times. In fact, anybody who's out there who's really wants to learn herbs, I just used to keep it by my bed and read 2 or 3 herbs every night. And it just still is remarkable that she wrote that book in the 30s, before internet. I mean, I don't know how she gathered all that information, because it's still an essential reference, really. So anyway, she had wrote in there something about that on the solstice, elderflowers and St. John's wort both were blooming in England, and that elderflowers, there was a folklore was that if you slept under an elder bush on the summer solstice, that it would give you the ability to see fairies. But that some of those fairies were really mischievous and could really mess with you. And so the trick was to sleep under an elder, but with some St. John's wort, because St. John's wort acts as a protection against, we know that it heals the skin. It helps people who suffer from especially types of depression where basically they have a hard time disconnecting their energy from other people. They pick up other people's energy, and it really impacts their mood and can really, agitate them or depress them. So what Grieve was saying was that, to sleep under an elder bush, but with some St. John's wort, you could take advantage of the mischievousness of the midsummer, but be protected. And so I was in this field, and it was right around summer solstice, and right in the middle of the field, there was this little, collection of blooming elder bushes. And I was like, oh, wow, I get to sleep under an elder bush. And then when I went to put my sleeping bag down, I realized that it was in a field of St. John's wort. And it just felt like divine intervention, that I got to spend that night. I'll never forget it, because, I was on the side of this mountain with these 2 plants living right there, looking up at the sky and the stars, and just feeling like, magic was happening. It was profound. So this time of year, I still really just remember that experience and have a lot of gratitude for those 2 plants and the way they complement each other. So that's my plant story. And I mean, I've used both of them energetically, ritually, and also as therapeutically. And they're 2 of my strongest allies.
I actually had a couple squirts of St. John's wort tincture before the call. Can you tell us maybe a little bit about why you adore St. John's wort?
Yeah. Well, just to go back to what I said a few minutes ago,
Sure.
I think that, besides using it as an herb for the skin, I like making the solar infusions. We don't have a lot of it here in Georgia. It's not like other parts of the country, like especially in the Pacific Northwest, where it's so prolific. We do have another species here, the punctatum, but it doesn't really produce a lot of flowers. But the St. John's wort tincture, one time I was in a rollover car accident. This was shortly after I got out of herb school, and I had severe whiplash. And I was told that I had some, injury to my neck that probably was never going to resolve itself, and that I would just need to learn to live with it, But I started taking St. John's wort internally, and I also applied the oil topically to my neck and shoulders, and completely healed it. I don't have, that was 30 years ago. I have no issues with my neck and shoulders, even after, being in a van that rolled 7 times down the highway, which, when they came to get us out of the car, they were surprised we were alive, that kind of
wow.
event.
Oh my gosh.
So, I think it does a really good job of handling nerve damage internally and externally, but I do use it a lot for people who struggle with having good boundaries. I think St. John's wort helps people make the discrimination between self and other. Like, what is my stuff that I need to deal with, and what is Mason's stuff that he needs to deal with? And I think that a lot of times when people experience a lot of anxiety and feeling that kind of dark depression where they feel hopeless, that St. John's wort helps them kind of draw that boundary around themselves so they don't suck up everybody else's energy. So that's an episode. That's a context where I find St. John's wort energetically really does some amazing things.
Yeah, sounds like good medicine for me. I'll say that much. Awesome. Thanks for sharing. Are you allowed to tell us if you actually ended up talking to the fairies that night?
Yeah, it was, I've been seeing him ever since.
Yeah, I can tell.
It was a one-time, thing, and then I was in.
Yep, initiated.
I was in after that. Yeah.
Right on. Well, I was telling you also pre-call about this segment we're trying to do called Giving Flowers. And I was asking you about, who has helped you along your herbalist journey. And you were saying it's your mentees that you like to give props to. So I was just kind of hoping you could give your flowers to your mentees and whatnot.
Well, yeah, thank you I love that you asked. I love that idea of who do you give flowers to. That's
Thank you.
A great way to put it. As I get older and as I've done this work for a long period of time, like I said, I feel really passionate about supporting others who want to be herbalists, who feel called to be herbalists. And, even though no matter where we start out in our work together, I'm always just kind of amazed by the creativity and how different people that I'm working with take what they know about herbs and make it their own, and then do something with it that no one else has done.
Yeah.
So like I have someone that I'm mentoring right now who's a practicing psychotherapist, and she is creating like kind of a complimentary online experience for her clients who have issues with sleep, and using it to introduce them to herbs and also to offer them really concrete help with their sleep issues. And the way she's integrating her experience as a practitioner, as a clinician and psychotherapy with the herbs, and making it very accessible and altering the course of people's lives, because they are really my feeling is if you don't have good quality sleep, it's like a bucket with a hole in it. It doesn't matter what else you do, it's going to run out, because you need that restorative yin experience of quality sleep in order to function. And so when I see her work, I just think, why didn't I think of that? It's so vital and so important. And then, here in Georgia, we have the whole herb cart and the herb bus that Lorna Moni Brodek started And so a lot of my students go and work down there as volunteers, and, get an experience of using herbs in that context. And then sometimes create products as a result of the needs that they see. So sometimes I wish I had another 40 years to do this work, because there's so many ways that herbalism is evolving right now that, I think it's becoming a really vital part of healthcare in the United States, despite the attempts of, institutions to squelch what we do. That herbal mycelium is everywhere now.
Are you pretty optimistic about the future of herbalism in general?
I am. Yeah, very much. Yeah, very much. Because I feel like, it's more accepted and that it's more available. And then I'm also this is another thing that's happened through my work as a teacher, is a lot of people who've come through my training programs have started herb farms and started growing, bulk herbs for sale. And I think that, like the organic foods movement, we need bioregional growers who are providing plants to the practitioners in their region. So on my website, actually, just as a little thing, I have a herb resources page where I've collected all the businesses I could find in the Southeast that do something with herbs.
Oh, yeah.
Nursery or products or practitioners, and created a directory so that we can find each other. Because, I think, I love some of the large herb companies that make, that have thousands of herbs for sale and by the pound, but the vitality of the plants that I get from Heartsong herbs down in Athens or Hillebrand herbs up in North Carolina, there's no comparison. And I'm feeding my community, because these are my people, right? Yeah.
I'm so glad you reminded me of the resources section. I'll have to link to that as well. It's a pretty robust resource for the people in the South. So yeah, great.
Yeah. And if anybody out there listening has some kind of business that I don't have listed, it's totally arbitrary. Just whatever I hear of, I put on there. And,
sure.
And, there's no fee involved or anything. It's just a labor of love over here.
Love that. Yeah, Herb Rally has we list all the schools or the ones we hear about, and the events and stuff like that. I love that there's different farm lists. I know Rosalie De La Forêt has a great extensive farm list on her website. So yeah, you gave your flowers to your mentees, and I kind of want to transition to having you talk about your crafting your herbal practice. This is an upcoming mentorship program with Emily Ruff and Kat Meyer that you all three are kind of co-leading. So I'm just curious if you could tell the audience a little bit about that and maybe what each of your individual roles is.
Sure. Yeah, this is going to kind of pull together a lot of the work I've been doing with individuals over the years. So Kat and Emily and I, we've known each other for years, but we just sort of got into this conversation about how important it was how we describe it is to create a container to put all the information that you have about herbs into, so that you can create a safe place for healing to occur. And so kind of with that vision in mind, we've just put together a 6-month virtual program that is designed to give everybody confidence to go for it. Emily has a lot of experience in doing, a lot of her social justice work, her work with trauma intervention, the work she did in Orlando with the Grief Project after the shootings there, and her whole commitment to, working in that area of social justice. And also, I think the three of us share this, but she's going to really kind of articulate this in the course. The idea that you can't do healing, you have to be healing. Mm-hmm. So that, we're going to be encouraging our students to adopt practices that support them and their well-being and keep them full, not let their work be something that drains them. So Emily's going to be kind of bringing that piece. Kat has done extensive work, with starting clinics and doing a lot of work in training clinicians. So a lot of what she's going to be talking about is the intake process. We're going to be doing a lot of case study review. And I'm going to be, there's a lot of overlap, but I will be doing a lot of creating the structure for how you do your work, and that there's no one way to do it. But I see a lot of herbalists starting out, they have people cancel at the last minute. They have people call them in the middle of the night. So it's how to have a healthy boundary. Because one thing that's, I think, unique about herbalists is that we're not removed from the community that we work from. We're integrated into it. So how do you handle going to a potluck and you see someone there who you saw for some issue 2 weeks ago and keep them from giving you an update or showing you the rash, right? While you're eating, So, how to have, to be in your community, but also have those kind of professional boundaries that allow you to just be socializing with people and then making it very clear, this is a situation now where I want you to talk to me about what's going on with you. We're also going to cover the really boring stuff like business entities and taxes, those are areas I've taught a lot about over the years. How to set up your apothecary and get wholesale accounts. If you don't have a resale tax ID number and you're not buying herbs wholesale, that will not be a source of revenue for you. You will lose money every time somebody walks out the door with some herbs. So the first 3 months will be a lot of those tools, and then the last 3 months will be more about the intake, case studies, and things like that. And we got a lot of great, actually kind of inspired by the format you're using. We're going to have a bunch of guest teachers that we're going to interview about their practices, that will be recorded videos that will be shared with the students throughout the course.
So much great value. And honestly, a lot of the value is going to be in that boring stuff, because those are going to be the questions where where do you find that information? You know what I mean? So it's going to be super valuable for the mentees or the students that you get. So I want to say it starts in March. Is that?
No, it starts in September. It starts in September and it goes in March.
Wow, I was way off. Okay, that's all right. I know it's yourherbalpractice.com. I'll leave a link to that in the show notes for more information. But also, dear listener, in about 9 days or a week or something like that, I'm going to be interviewing Patricia, Kat, and Emily as kind of like a roundtable Herbalist Hour discussion around specifically this topic, and what the course is all about. So I don't know if you had
it. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Again, with the goal of take your herbal skills seriously and let's do it, take that. Yeah. And you heard me tell that little story in the show, in the keynote about Chris Hobbs saying he didn't realize that you could say you were an herbalist.
That's right.
Is that?
I do remember that.
That's a job description. Whoa.
Right. Awesome. Well, I'm excited for that episode, that discussion. I've never had, I don't think, 3 people on the show at once, so we'll see how that goes. I'm sure it'll be fun. But do you still have a few minutes to do let's get to know Patricia questions? Yeah,
let's go.
Awesome. Yeah, and I have a bunch of other questions, but we'll have to have a round 2 at some point. Maybe we'll meet up in Madison at some point. That'd be fun. So we're gonna do a random card from this Let's Get Deep Friends edition, and I don't know what the question's going to be, but we'll what do you spend most of your free time doing?
Free time doing. Well, I cook a lot. I play games. I'm really into games, cards, and other things. So I'm always trying to get people over here to play cards with me or something like that. That's a really good question. I have an old dog who takes up a lot of my time. A few years back, I sort of decided to stop raising puppies and to just adopt senior dogs. So I've had now a series of senior dogs. So that's been a big thing.
Love that.
cooking, making things, the elderberry preserves. I do a lot of canning. Hanging out with friends, hiking around here. This is such a beautiful area.
Oh, yeah. I bet.
Just escaping into the woods. So
sounds like you have a fun, balanced life. So the rules of the game is I got to answer as well. And I play too much online chess. I play chess all the time.
Yeah.
What's that?
You're kind of a gamer then of some sort.
Yeah, I guess so. It's funny because I'm like, it's online. Is online chess a video game? I guess it is. And then I go on tons of walks, just literally hours of walks. Like I love walking around the neighborhood. Yeah, so just I like to walk and play chess. That's kind of what I like to do. I've been asking this to herbalists lately. It's kind of a similar question, but it's unrelated. What's something you like to do? I guess you kind of answered it. The question is, what's something you like to do outside of the realm of herbalism? Sounds like cooking is one of them.
Yeah, well, I also have a little, I have a little tour company. I take people to Greece.
Oh, cool.
I just got back from being there for a month. So a lot of my work is influenced by Greek, my Greek heritage and the people that I learned from over there. And on Crete in particular, which is where I take people, the line between herbs and food is really blurred.
Totally.
And so, being in that environment always helps me like do a reset of, it doesn't have to be complicated. It can be simple, but it just needs to be there every day. It needs to be part of what you're doing. So.
Yeah, cooking is also a huge part of my life as well. And when we were living in the RV, feel like a part of my soul was missing because all we were making was like wraps and salads every day. And now that we're back in a kitchen, I'm cooking like almost 3 meals a day, borderline elaborate sometimes. And it's just, I'm having so much fun being back in the kitchen. So yeah, could not agree more. Right on. Well, any like closing thoughts that you want to share with the audience?
Well, I mean, just if there's people out there who feel passionate about herbs, but just are like tentative, I really want to give them a pep talk and just say, not only will it feed your soul, but it will also help a lot of people, and that the demand is great. We need people in every community who can offer this alternative to conventional medicine. I think that conventional doctors have a lot to offer in terms of diagnosis and trauma care, but for the chronic health issues and the little things that make our lives difficult, herbs are just spectacular at helping people sleep better, think clearer, digest their food, all of that. So I say just go for it. Don't let anyone talk you out of it.
Hear, hear. Well, thank you so much, Patricia, for joining us. Thanks to Lydia for joining us, Herb Rally Schoolhouse member. And thank you, dear listener, for joining us as well. And we'll see y'all in the next episode of the Herbalist Hour. Take care.
My pleasure. Thanks, Mason. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye. And that's going to do it for today's episode. Thanks so much for listening to the Herb Rally podcast. If you'd like to hear more from us here at Herb Rally, we now have a text message community, believe it or not. Basically, it's just updates from us. We send about 1 to 7 texts per week, notifying you about new events, videos, courses, podcasts. You get the idea. It's pretty much like our email newsletter, just in text form. So if you'd like to receive text messages from Herb Rally, just text JOIN, that's JOIN, to the number 541-256-2895. Again, that's JOIN to number 541-256-2895. And to stop receiving texts, that's easy too. Just text STOP to the same number. It'll opt you out immediately. Okay, thanks again for listening. Have a great rest of your day.